All right, welcome. Today we're going to be talking to you about React. If you've never heard about React before, this is a good place to be because we're going to introduce it to you. You may wonder what React is if you never touched it. And what it is it's essentially a free open source front-end JavaScript library for building user interfaces or UI components. It's maintained by Facebook and a community of individual developers and companies. React can be used as a base in development of single-page web applications, meaning that the page does not need to be reloaded in order to introduce new elements. To put it in plain words, React.js is a very efficient solution for developing fast and scalable front-end for web and mobile applications, although for mobile, you do need to use React Native. Its gentle learning curve also attracted a lot of developers. React.js is a lightweight view library that supports UI components. Therefore, in the model view controller, it is only responsible for the application's view layer. Facebook made React an open source in GitHub, and React has now evolved into a relatively stable tool. As the community grows fairly fast, there are now a lot of resources available for developers working with React. React was the first choice among all our options in the list for this tech eval presentation, partially because React is such a hot topic and such a hot framework, but also because half of our team members had heard about it, the other half had not, or never used it before. We have some data to support the popularity of React. React is on the list of the most popular front-end frameworks and owns a huge community. There are over 13,500 commits on GitHub and over 231,000 related questions on Stack Overflow. Additionally, the list of resources available to remedy potential problems while using React is quite extensive. There are more than 220,000 websites today that use React, and there's a lot of really big name ones. Here's a list of companies you probably have heard of who use React in their development. Netflix, Facebook, Instagram, Airbnb, all these companies are a relatively big name, and they use React because of its efficiency and its ease of use. We all know that React was created by Facebook and is still maintained by them, along with a community of ever-growing, passionate developers and companies. Nowadays, it achieves high rankings in popularity, developer satisfaction, and is one of the most wanted industry tools due to its excellent features. But one may wonder with that, how did React get started? The story starts in 2011, when Jordan Walk created Fax.js, a prototype to improve project management efficiency. This was the birth of what would later become and evolve into a full version of React. In 2012, Facebook bought Instagram, which later put pressure to decouple React from Facebook and make it open source. In 2013, Jordan Walk introduced what was currently called React, an open source material. It is experimental stage for React. In 2014, there came some important features. One, React developer tools. They were added as an extension to the Chrome developer tools, and they allow you to view web pages and see the React framework behind it. Two, the introduction of React Hot Loader allows React components to be live loaded without the loss of state. In 2015, React reached a relatively stable state. Several significant milestones pushed React even further into the mainstream. March 2015, React Native for iOS became open source and available on GitHub. In September 2015, React Native for Android began rolling out. In 2017, Facebook announced React Fiber, a new set of internal algorithms for rendering. There are also several iterations after 2017 of importance. But now that we have a basic knowledge of React and its evolvement, next, let's move further into some details about this amazing framework.
Okay, let's talk about React features. First, React has a component-based architecture. A React.js application is a combination of the multiple components, and each component has its own logic and can be reusable. For example, on the right here, we have filterable product table as a big component. It has search bar and product table as the children component. Product category row and product row are also nested inside the product table. We also can take any component here and reuse them anywhere else on the app. Component base make it easier to maintain and implement large-scale projects. React data flow is one-way data binding. When designing a React.js app, we often nest child component within the higher order parent components. One-way data binding gives us better control throughout the application. However, if you want to data flow in another direction, for example, on the picture on the right, if you want to access grandchild to component information from the parent to component, we might want to use additional state management features like Redux, Plus, MobX, or Context API. The next feature I want to talk about is JSX syntax. JSX allows us to embed HTML code into JavaScript code. In the example on the right, we embed the result of a calling JavaScript function format name into H1 element. As we can see, JSX improves readability, and if anything goes wrong on the code, we'll get more useful and meaningful error and warning message. Moreover, it's helpful when working with the UI inside the JavaScript code. Finally, JSX also prevents injection attacks. On the example below, it's safe to embed user input in JSX. By default, React DOM accepts any values embedded in JSX before re-rendering them. It ensures that you can never inject anything that's not written in your application because everything is converted into a string before being re-rendered.
So what kind of problems does React solve? React is used to remedy slow performance due to DOM manipulation. React keeps a lightweight virtual DOM to keep track of changes after every component render. The virtual DOM is then compared after every update to identify which objects have changed. And on the real DOM, React can then exclusively update changed objects. The example on the right shows this concept in action. Using browser tools, we can see that only the clock is being updated in the DOM.
So, amongst all the different development tools that exist, why would one choose to use React? What sets it apart and what makes it useful? Well, part of what sets it apart is that it's so easy to understand. For example, at the beginning of this week, only half of our group had actually had any familiarity or even used React before. But in just that short amount of time, we managed to not only familiarize ourselves with its tools, but also become comfortable enough to give you this presentation today. React is easy because it only requires a basic knowledge of CSS, HTML, and JavaScript in order to get started. There's a very decent hands-on tutorial on the React website, which is where this code and this image came from, and there's also a separate step-by-step tutorial if that is more your speed. A lot of the reason this is so easy to understand is because React's use of components heavily improves readability. If you look on the right here, we can see a class board on the top. And this isn't the full function. It's just a small component of it. But this render square method calls another component square and passes a prop value I into it. On the bottom, you can see that square component, and it's rendering and returning this.props.value, which is the value that was passed into it by the board class. As a result, on the left-hand side, you see the board that's produced by this code, which is after board calls square 9 times, you get 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All different squares produced individually from the board component calling 9 separate square components. So another thing that makes React useful is its emphasis on reusability. And what is reusability? Essentially, it's when one can take the same code and use it again and again to make their life easier. In this case, React uses its UI components, which can be used in several places over and over again. Passing different information called props, or short for properties from parents to children, allows this code to have different functionalities. Now, in this code chunk you see here, it's a function called button. And what this does is it produces a button, as seen on the right. Now, each of these buttons looks different and can have a different functionality as a result of the props being passed into it. You see the prop called props.type, which will change the class of the HTML element generated by this function. That means we can provide different CSS styling based on the different class names provided. We also have an onClick, props.handleClick, which is a callback function. Since there's one-way binding, we can't actually pass information directly from a child component to a parent component. What we can do is use the handleClick function, the callback function, to have the click on the child make the parent do something. And then using these tools, we can see that having just one function button, we can produce a wide array of different buttons that look different and have different uses. Reusing is good coding practice because not only does it make it easier for you to read and understand the code, it also makes it easier to refactor your code later. But most importantly, it saves you time and budget when you can reuse existing code instead of having to rewrite everything and hard coding pieces on a case-by-case basis.
We've looked at what makes React useful. Now let's look at what makes React cool. One point is developer friendliness. With JSX combining HTML and JavaScript allows you a single file for a component. Also, React DevTools help you view component hierarchies. As you can see on the right here, we can use a variable called name and include it in our HTML code called hello name. Another major point is speed. Its virtual DOM makes the site faster by re-rendering only part of the DOM that needs to be. On the second image here, you can see that the function getGreeting will change its HTML message depending on if we know the user's name or not. Another reason is desirability. React is the most desired web framework according to the 2021 Stack Overflow developer survey. Combined with this, popularity is another point. It's easy to bring new hires up to speed, and knowledge of React is a desirable skill, as shown with the Google Trends for the past 12 months. Another reason is portability to mobile. Developers who learned React.js can also easily learn React Native for developing mobile apps.
React Native is a cross-platform front-end framework based on React. With React Native, you can build applications for iOS, Android, macOS, Windows, and the web. React Native code is written in JavaScript, then translated to native UI elements. With React Native, you can develop for multiple platforms using a single code base. React isn't perfect. Some downsides include fast development pace. React is constantly being updated, which can make it overwhelming for developers to keep up. Slow documentation. With the addition of many new features, documentation and tutorials become outdated fast. JSX as a barrier. Having to learn JSX can be a deal breaker for some.
To compensate for these shortcomings, React includes the React DevTools, which is a useful Chrome extension. It shows the React component hierarchy, highlights the components as they are being re-rendered, as you might have noticed from one of our previous slides, where the timer clock ticking down was being updated and it was being highlighted as it was being ticked off. The React DevTools can also search or filter components, and the DevTool also offers a profiler for evaluating performance. And now, to show the React DevTools in action, we have a demo for you.
In this demo, I'm going to go over a React app I made named Comment Showcase. So this app just allows you to go look at YouTube videos, as well as the comments with this big stylized font. So now I'm going to go and take a look at a React component named search results. So here, if I search for a video, this search results box pops up. If I go to Visual Studio, here you can see the actual component, the file for the component, and here's the JSX for the component. So here you can see that here is where we're adding each search result tile. So this is a child component of search result, and it's these are the search result tiles. So you can see that I'm passing a bunch of props down to search result tiles. So I'm passing a key, an ID, the title name, the channel name, the title, a thumbnail, as well as this callback function called setCurrentVideo. So this is actually what we're using to change the YouTube video that's being played and the comments. So now if I go to search result tile, here we can see all the props that we're getting. And here is the JSX for the search result tile, where we're using in handle click, on click, handle click, it's calling this, which uses the callback function, setCurrentVideo. Now going back to the browser, if I go to the components here, search result, here we can see the actual React component being shown through React DevTools. And here are all the search result tiles. And then if I click on a video, it calls that callback function. And here I'm on a different video. Play it. Got the comments. And you can also filter comments.
And that's the end of our presentation. Thank you for listening.